Can you share a little bit about your sight loss journey?
I have retinitis pigmentosa. And when I was a child, I realized that flashlight tag and going to beach parties after dark seemed to be a much bigger challenge to me than anyone else. And I didn't really understand why. So I asked my parents to take me to the eye doctor. And this was a long time ago, probably in the mid 60s. So they didn't know much about RP back then. The doctor did tell my mother I had RP, but because of the impact on them, they didn't know how to manage that. And so they never did tell me. I'm not sure how I felt growing up, not having an answer. My memory is very cloudy about that, but I knew something was going on because of the night blindness. Then my husband and I met and got married when we were 21. And during a routine checkup, my primary care asked me if my parents had ever told me I was going blind. So he knew. And that was quite a blow to both of us. We were newlyweds. So that put my husband in a very difficult position, but it was hard to discuss this with my parents. My mom was just devastated by it and really had a hard time talking about it. So my husband and I started our married life knowing this, and he said to me one day, when you need me to be, I will be your eyes. I've never forgotten that. So I found myself an ophthalmologist. Back then, I don't even know if they had retinal specialists. But anyway, we've had many life adventures despite vision loss. And luckily, I have a very slow progressing type of RP. Even when I was in my 20s, I know I had significant peripheral vision loss. But because I didn't know what everyone else saw, didn't realize how limited I was until in my early 30s, an ophthalmologist said to me that I probably would not pass the field vision test for driving. That was another blow. I had three sons at that time. So I just decided I wasn't going to put anybody at risk. And so I gave up driving then. That's been 40 years for me almost that I haven't driven, but it's not a loss you ever really completely get over because of the feelings of dependence and isolation.
That's really interesting, especially that your parents decided to keep that from you and you
Hmm.
sort of found out on your own.
Yeah, they just didn't know how. Family issues were meant to be kept private and not discussed if they were painful. So that was pretty much how everybody managed family issues back then.
Can you share a pivotal moment in your journey that significantly shaped your perspective and your resilience?
We had to make a lot of decisions based on my vision loss. I had four children, and my husband worked construction. And I said, Dave, if something happens to you, what would I do to support my family? I had had 2 years of college under my belt when I was young. So, through all these amazing connections, I found out about a weekend program for Hiram College, and things just fell into place. So, for 2 years, every other weekend, I went to college, left Dave home with the kids, and we managed, and I got my degree. But I worked as a social worker from about 1989 till 2006. And because of our community and everything is so spread out and not a lot of social work positions that don't require travel, my opportunities were limited. So I worked in a hospital for 10 years as a discharge planner, and then I worked at a nursing home for 2 years. But it just became much more difficult to navigate the halls and not run over wheelchairs. And wet floor signs, etc. And I had not come to the point where I felt comfortable asking for accommodations. So after much discussion with my husband, I decided to retire. I was probably 52 at the time. I I just couldn't do it. So we agreed that was the best route for me, was to retire and reinvent myself.
Well, what you did sounds really amazing. Being able to go back to college and get your degree.
Both
Did?
very proud of ourselves
Yeah.
for that accomplishment. It was a joint effort, that's for sure.
Well, in between that time before you retired, you mentioned some of the challenges, obstacles, and things like that. How was it? Because I know there's still stigma around work and disability.
Mhm.
So, what were those challenges like for you as you began noticing that you were having a little more difficulty navigating?
The challenges for me were not looking disabled. I worked
Yes.
with so many people at the hospital that I felt, how do you do this? How do you meet someone and say, oh, by the way? I mean, I would see hundreds of people every day, staff, patients, their families. So I never learned how to manage that. So I pretended I didn't have vision loss. There was a core group of nurses around me that kind of understood, but for the most part, people did not. As difficult as it was, I kind of played a role of a non disabled person.
That's so unfortunate.
Yeah. And I think part of it is because with retinitis pigmentosa, the vision loss is so gradual. You're already making accommodations on a daily basis. So I just found it to be easier to make those accommodations myself. I remember one time a psychologist said, well, just get a cane and get cane trained, and people will know. And I said, you mean I'm going to leave work on Friday? People think I have no sight loss, and I'm going to come back to work on Monday with a white cane. I said, I just can't see that happening.
Right.
So I remember when I worked at the nursing home, there was a young man who could walk somewhat, but needed his wheelchair always there. And he said to me, I sometimes just wish this disease would progress completely so people would get it. He said, so
Yeah.
people wouldn't question, why are you in a wheelchair today? I saw you walking yesterday. And I said, you know what? That's exactly how I feel about vision loss. Sometimes I just wish it would hurry up and be done with it, so I wouldn't have to always be explaining why I'm tripping over something or running into someone or something like that. He hit the nail on the head for me.
Yeah. Can you recount a specific achievement or a milestone in your life that you believe exemplifies your strength and determination despite your visual impairment?
I think a couple would be going back to college with vision loss, and I did not ask for any accommodations. So I suffered a lot of eye strain and headaches trying to read text. Another one, when I retired, I was very isolated, but I decided I needed to do some things that made me proud of myself. So I got back into running, and my friend and I, we tethered and we ended up running a marathon. I was very proud of that achievement because that was challenging visually and physically, and I was in my early 60s, so it was something to be proud of, I thought.
That is something to be proud of.
Yeah, my son was very instrumental as a motivator for me because he
Oh,
was he was a runner.
oh,
And then, well, I ended up needing a knee replacement, so I'm done running. But
okay.
I took up gardening, and I had kind of dabbled in gardening for many years, on and off. But when I retired, my husband built me 6 raised beds that are 4 by 8, and I grow all our vegetables that we like and have learned an immense amount about growing vegetables, herbs, flowers. Some people just like to garden,
Mhm.
but for me, what it became was I realized my need to be in nature and to be among plants. So it's a stronger desire than just growing what I like to eat. It's just everything about being outdoors. My husband and I like to hike, and there's just something about it I feel like I need more than just want.
In navigating both personal and professional spheres, what advice would you give to others on a similar journey to inspire confidence and self-empowerment?
Well, it's not something I came up with, but it is something that I learned through therapy is acceptance and independence. I think for me, I finally accepted and was no longer ashamed when I got my guide dog Hyatt. I was so proud of her and her ability that I just kind of wanted to show her off to the world.
Yeah,
And I felt like it wasn't how other people thought about me, but how I thought about myself was when I used a cane, I felt pitied. But when I walked with Hyatt down the street, I felt proud of her, proud of the amazing training she achieved and her amazing skills. So I've had Hyatt for 7 years almost. That's a long time for me to have worked towards acceptance.
yes,
But I think when you have a cane or a guide dog, you no longer have to explain yourself to the world. The cane
right.
and the guide dog say it for you. So there's not a lot of questions about why did you bump into me? Why are you looking lost? It tells your story for you, which I think is so much easier.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
acceptance is the key.
Yeah,
And then working on your independence.
I think those are the 2 most powerful points, and I actually agree with that, especially the acceptance.